The first thing Ethan Blake noticed was the girl's shoes, not her face, not the rainwater dripping from her hair, not the way she kept her shoulders tight like she was trying to make herself smaller, just the shoes. They were scuffed canvas sneakers, soaked through, the white rubber edges stained gray, the kind of shoes that didn't belong on the polished marble floors of the Lakeview Crown Hotel. And Ethan Blake, director of guest experience, which was a fancy way of saying the man who controlled everything guests saw and felt, could spot out of place from 30 feet away. He stood behind the front desk like a king in his court, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and a tie that probably cost more than the girl's entire outfit. Around him, the lobby glowed with warm chandeliers, brass accents, and the soft scent of expensive citrus candles. Outside, Chicago was a blur of rain and headlights. Inside, the Lakeview Crown was dry, perfect, curated. And Ethan's job was to keep it that way. The girl stepped forward slowly, clutching a small backpack to her chest like it contained her heart. "Hi," she said, voice careful. I have a reservation." The front desk agent, Marisol, offered a polite smile. "Of course. Name?" The girl swallowed. Ava Carter." Marisol's fingers moved across the keyboard. Her smile faded into confusion, then returned, strained. "I'm not seeing it. Are you sure it's for tonight?" "Yes," Ava said quickly. "I'm sure. It was booked through the corporate office." That phrase, corporate office, made Ethan's eyes flick up from the ledger he'd been reviewing. Corporate office bookings were rare, usually reserved for executives, VIP guests, and people who didn't ask. They expected. But this girl didn't look like anyone corporate would help. Ethan stepped closer, not rushing, but with the smooth confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked. Marisol glanced at him like she was relieved he'd taken over. "She says she has a reservation, but I can't find it under her name." Ethan looked at Ava the way someone might look at a smudge on a spotless window. "Miss..." He paused, eyes flicking to her backpack. "Carter, you said?" "Yes. And you claim corporate booked you a room here." "I didn't say claim," Ava replied softly. "I said, I have one." Ethan's mouth tightened. He hated tone. He hated any hint that someone beneath his standard might challenge him. He leaned in, just enough to make it feel like pressure. "Do you have identification?" he asked. Ava nodded and pulled a wallet from her pocket. Her hands shook slightly as she passed over a state ID. Ethan glanced at it. Ava Carter, age 18, address listed in a neighborhood Ethan only knew from crime reports. He gave the ID back like it was damp. "No reservation," he said flatly. Ava's face fell, but she didn't back away. "Maybe it's under another name," she said, "or under the trust. I was told it would be here." "Trust," Ethan repeated, letting the word hang in the air like a joke. Marisol shifted uncomfortably. Ava continued, voice quiet but steady. "I just need a room for tonight. I can show you the email. I have it." She started digging into her backpack. Ethan raised a hand. "Stop." Ava froze. Ethan's voice turned colder, louder, just enough for nearby guests to hear. Not shouting, but the kind of volume that carried authority. "This is a 5-star property. We have standards. We can't just let anyone wander in with a backpack and say corporate promised them a suite." A couple sitting near the lobby fireplace looked over. A businessman at the concierge desk glanced in their direction. Ava's cheeks reddened. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," she said. I was told to come here." Ethan's eyes hardened. "And who told you that?" Ava hesitated. "Someone named Mr. Langley, from the corporate office." Ethan knew that name. Nolan Langley was the interim legal officer for Crown Hospitality Group, the corporation that owned the Lakeview Crown and dozens of properties nationwide. Ethan's stomach twisted, not with concern, but irritation. People dropped names all the time. It was a trick, a pressure tactic, and Ethan hated being manipulated. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Miss Carter, Mr. Langley is an attorney, Ethan said. He doesn't book hotel rooms for walk-ins. If you're looking for a shelter, there are services in this city that can help you. The word shelter landed like a slap. Ava's eyes widened. I'm not, she started. Ethan cut her off. Marisol, please call security, he said. Marisol blinked. Ethan, maybe we should… Security, he repeated, sharper. Ava's breathing quickened. Please, she said, voice trembling now. I have the email. I can show you. I just need a minute. Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice so it was only for her, but it somehow felt even crueler. This isn't a place for games, he said. And I don't care what story you've practiced. You don't belong here. Ava looked at him like she couldn't believe a stranger could be that certain about her. She tried to steady herself. I'm not asking for free, she whispered. I can pay. I just need to check in. Ethan let out a short, dismissive laugh. With what? He asked, glancing down at her soaked hoodie and faded jeans. Spare change? The nearby guests were definitely listening now. Ethan could feel their attention. He felt powerful under it. Ava's eyes filled with tears she fought hard to hold back. That's when Marisol's screen chimed. A new email had arrived in the front desk inbox. Marisol looked at it, then looked at Ava. Her eyes widened. Ethan, she whispered. There's a message from corporate. Ethan didn't move. Read it. Marisol swallowed. It says, please prepare room 4902 for Ms. Ava Carter. Treat her as a protected VIP. All charges to be billed to Crown Trust account. Do not discuss her identity in the lobby. Silence. The fireplace crackled. The rain tapped against the tall glass windows. Ethan's face stayed composed, but something in his eyes flickered. He took a step toward the screen, snatching the printed paper Marisol had started to pull from the printer. He scanned it. The email was real, sent from Nolan Langley. The trust account, Crown Trust, was not something normal employees even knew existed. Ethan's throat tightened. But instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, he did what prideful people do when the ground shifts under them. He doubled down. This could be forged, Ethan said. Marisol stared at him. It came from our corporate server. Ethan's jaw worked. Ava wiped her cheek quickly, embarrassed that her tears had almost shown. I told you, she said. Her voice wasn't smug. It was exhausted. Ethan looked at her again, really looked. She wasn't acting like a scammer. She wasn't loud. She wasn't demanding. She looked like someone who'd spent years learning to ask for help without expecting it. Still, Ethan couldn't accept it. Not because he thought she was lying anymore, but because if she was telling the truth, it meant he had just humiliated someone corporate wanted protected, and in Ethan's world, mistakes didn't get forgiven. They got punished. He forced a tight smile. Fine, he said. We'll check you in. He turned to Marisol. Run her card for incidentals. Ava blinked. The email said, everyone provides a card, Ethan snapped. Ava hesitated, then reached into her wallet. She slid a simple debit card across the counter. Ethan glanced at it, expecting it to be declined. Marisol swiped it, approved, and not just approved. The system showed a balance that made Marisol's eyes widen again. She quickly looked away, professional. Ethan caught it. A chill crawled up his spine. He handed Ava the key card without meeting her eyes. Enjoy your stay, he said. Ava took it, then paused. For a second, it looked like she might say something sharp, something deserved. But she didn't. She just nodded and walked toward the elevators, her wet shoes squeaking softly on the marble. Ethan watched her go, trying to ignore the knot forming in his stomach, because deep down, he knew. That email hadn't been about a simple reservation. It had been about control, about secrecy, about protecting someone from exactly what Ethan had just done. And now, there was no undoing it. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in his office behind the lobby, watching the security monitors like they were a confession booth. At 11:12 p.m., Ava stepped out of the elevator on the 49th floor. She stood in the hallway for a moment, holding a small envelope in her hand. Ethan zoomed in. The envelope looked official. Thick paper, sealed, with a wax stamp. His heart thumped once, hard. He rewound the footage and watched it again. Ava wasn't just visiting. She was here for something. Or someone. At 8:05 a.m. the next morning, Ethan received another message. This time, it wasn't an email. It was a calendar invite. Mandatory executive meeting. Location: the Lakeview Crown Grand Ballroom. Time: 10 a.m. Attendees: all senior staff. Host: Nolan Langley. Ethan's blood ran cold. 2 hours later, the ballroom filled with managers in suits and dresses, whispering and checking their phones. Ethan stood near the back, trying to look confident. He told himself it could be anything. A policy update, a surprise audit, a brand announcement. But his mind kept replaying the scene in the lobby, the way he'd said, "You don't belong here." At 10:03, Nolan Langley stepped onto the stage. He was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself like a man who lived in boardrooms. The chatter stopped. Nolan looked out across the room. "Thank you for coming on short notice," he said. "This is a sensitive matter for Crown Hospitality Group." Ethan's hands clenched behind his back. Nolan continued. "As many of you know, our company was founded by Eleanor Crown. She built this chain from a single property into a national legacy." Some staff nodded. Ethan knew the story. Everyone did. What they didn't know, what was whispered but never confirmed, was who would inherit it. Nolan's eyes swept the room. "Before Eleanor Crown passed away," he said, "she established a private trust. That trust controls the majority ownership of Crown Hospitality Group." Ethan's mouth went dry. Nolan paused, letting the weight sink in. "Until this week," he said, "the beneficiary of that trust remained undisclosed to most of the company for safety reasons." Ethan swallowed. Then Nolan said the words that made the room tilt. "The beneficiary is here today." A door at the side of the ballroom opened, and Ava Carter walked in. She wasn't wearing her soaked hoodie anymore. She wore a simple black dress, not flashy, not screaming wealth, just clean, tailored, and quiet. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were the same, steady, tired, brave. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Ethan felt his heartbeat in his ears. Nolan gestured toward her. "Ms. Ava Carter," he said, "is the granddaughter of Eleanor Crown." The room erupted in murmurs. Ethan's vision narrowed. Ava walked to the stage without rushing. She looked out at the crowd of people who managed the empire that was legally hers. When her gaze passed over Ethan, she didn't smirk. She didn't glare. She simply looked at him like he was a lesson she had already learned. Nolan spoke again. "Ms. Carter has spent the last several years living under a different name and outside the public eye," he said. "This was Eleanor's decision, intended to protect Ava during her childhood." Ethan's mind raced. So that was why. Ava hadn't grown up rich. She hadn't grown up protected. She had grown up ordinary, maybe even struggling, while her inheritance waited behind legal walls. Nolan turned a page in his folder. "Ms. Carter requested to visit this property first," he said. "Not because it is our most profitable, but because it represents our brand standard. And she wanted to experience it without special treatment." Ethan's stomach dropped. Without special treatment. Meaning Ethan's cruelty wasn't a misunderstanding. It was the test, and he had failed. Nolan continued, voice calm but sharp. "Yesterday, Ms. Carter arrived at this hotel with a confirmed reservation. She was treated in a manner that does not reflect our values." The room grew still. Ethan felt dozens of eyes shifting, trying to guess who had done it. He wanted to disappear. Ava stepped up to the microphone. Her hands didn't shake this time. "When I walked into this hotel yesterday," she began, "I didn't want a free room. I didn't want anyone to recognize me. I wanted to know what happens when someone like me asks for help in a place like this." She paused, and I found out. A hush fell. Ava continued. I've spent my life hearing about the Crown legacy, she said. About excellence, about hospitality, about making people feel safe. But yesterday, in the lobby, I was told I didn't belong. Ethan's face burned. Ava looked across the crowd again. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, she said. I'm here because this company belongs to the people who treat others with dignity, even when no one is watching. Ethan felt the words hit him like stones. Ava turned slightly toward Nolan. I asked Mr. Langley to arrange one thing, she said, an audit of how guests are treated when they don't look wealthy, how staff speak to them, how quickly security is called. A murmur rose. Ava's voice stayed calm. Because if you only treat people well when they look rich, she said, you're not offering hospitality. You're selling approval. She paused, letting that sit. Then she said, and I'm not interested in owning a company that sells approval. Nolan stepped back to the microphone. Based on what occurred, he said, Ms. Carter has directed immediate leadership changes at this property, effective today. Ethan's lungs tightened. Nolan looked down at his notes. Ethan Blake, he said clearly. Ethan flinched. Nolan continued. You are relieved of your duties as Director of Guest Experience. The room went dead silent. Ethan's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Ava didn't look pleased. She looked sad. Not sad for him exactly. Sad that this was predictable. Nolan added, your access badge will be deactivated at noon. HR will contact you with next steps. Ethan stood frozen. His entire identity had been built on control, and now it was being taken away by the very person he had tried to throw out. Ava stepped forward one last time. I want to say something, she said, eyes on the staff. This isn't about revenge. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to change a culture. Her gaze flicked to Ethan again, and culture changes when people understand consequences. Ethan's throat worked. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain. He wanted to say he was protecting the brand. But he finally understood the truth. He hadn't been protecting the brand. He had been protecting his ego. After the meeting, staff scattered in quiet shock. Ethan walked out of the ballroom like a man leaving his own funeral. In the hallway, he saw Ava standing near a window, looking out at the rain that had finally softened into mist. He hesitated. Then he approached, slower now, stripped of his armor. Miss Carter, he said. She turned. Up close, her eyes looked older than 18. I'm sorry, Ethan said, voice tight. I shouldn't have... Ava held up a hand. I don't need an apology that's only here because you found out who I am, she said. Ethan's face tightened. That's fair, he admitted. Ava's voice softened just a little. If you want to make it right, she said, make it right with the next person who walks into a lobby and looks like I did yesterday, even if you never work in a hotel again. Ethan swallowed. He nodded once. Ava turned back toward the window, and Ethan walked away, feeling smaller than he ever had in his expensive suit. Weeks later, the Lakeview Crown looked the same on the outside. Chandeliers, marble, the shining brass doors. But inside, something had shifted. Ava implemented anonymous guest audits. She introduced training that focused on dignity, not suspicion. She created partnerships with local shelters and youth programs, not as charity, but as community responsibility, and she made one rule clear. If you judge a guest by their appearance, you are not fit to represent the Crown name. As for Ethan, he didn't disappear into comfort. He lost more than his job. He lost the illusion that power made him untouchable, and for the first time, he learned what it felt like to be judged by someone who didn't care about his title. Because the most mind-blowing twist wasn't that Ava was the heiress. It was that the person with the least in that lobby had the most power in the entire building. Moral: never measure someone's worth by their clothes, their shoes, or the way they walk into a room. Because the moment you decide someone doesn't belong, you reveal the truth. The problem isn't them. It's you.